In this special episode of the Nurse Practitioner Podcast for the Oncology Patient Handouts and Resources, Alicia Taylor discusses life after her husband's glioblastoma diagnosis. Tell us about your husband, what he did, who was he, what your life was like.
Talking about Jason is one of my favorite subjects. Jason always knew he wanted to be a teacher, and he was an excellent teacher. He taught at North Penn in Lansdale for over 10 years, and he also coached many different sports. He made connections with his students and his players that lasted his entire life. Jason knew how to connect with people on every level. In 2005, Jason told me he wanted to leave teaching. It absolutely shocked me. Jason's calling was to teach. He not only got his students engaged, they trusted and loved him. He had a gift, a calling. However, Jason felt he needed to leave as he was feeling he was not the best as he could be, and my husband had a high bar. I supported his move with all my heart and admired him for it. It was a leap of faith. He ended up being a financial planner for 10 years and did pretty well. However, as time went on, doing a lot of training as a planner and realizing how much he missed teaching, it was really prevalent he needed to go back. The journey back wasn't easy. I supported him and helped him in every way I could. He ended up going back to teaching and taking a tremendous pay cut, but he was completely, utterly happy in the classroom. Jason was someone you instantly liked. He had an ability to make you feel like you were the most important person in the room. He was an excellent listener with incredible compassion and empathy. He was kind. He looked for opportunities to help people and did many, many kind gestures I would never know about because he was so incredibly humble. I probably weekly have someone reach out to me to tell me a Jason story and how he impacted them. I'm so incredibly grateful for those stories as it keeps his memory and spirit alive. He was a wonderful father, son, brother, friend, and my husband. We connected deeply because we both wanted to be parents more than anything. The early years with our children were our happiest of years. He loved being a father, and he loved his family. Our life was not perfect, but it was quite wonderful to me. I felt loved and secure. Jason was my best friend, my secret keeper, the first person I called with anything. Our life was good.
How did you find out about his glioblastoma diagnosis?
In early March of 2016, I went on a work trip to Denver. This was the first trip I decided to stay an extra night. I usually flew in and out for my business trips. That week, I barely heard from Jason. The last night of my trip, he called me and he was very irritable. I asked him what was wrong, and he said his head was killing him. He could barely concentrate. I recalled a few weeks back he was hit in the face playing basketball. He actually had a black eye. Jason played like he was a 20-some-year-old. He always gave 100%. I told him I thought he had a concussion and he needed to go to urgent care first thing tomorrow morning. I even remember saying to him, yes, you will miss school. He hated to miss school. I flew in the next day to meet Jason, his mother, and my kids to see a school play. He told me urgent care thought he had a concussion and to make an appointment with a neurologist. The next day was our son Gavin's all-star basketball game, and Jason wasn't out of bed by 10 a.m. that morning. This was so odd for him. He told me he would meet me at the game. I can still picture my husband walking across the basketball court to come sit in the stands with me. He didn't look right. He sat in front of me the whole game with his head in his hands. I told him he needed to cancel the baseball practice he had planned that day. He was the president of the league and the coach, and he did not take his role lightly. I used to have to tell him to not do things. He would spend the rest of the day in bed. The next day was my birthday, Sunday, March 6, 2016. We had a family ski trip planned. Jason decided to stay home, but he wanted me to go. I called his mother to make sure she can check in on him, and I made sure Jason was all settled, and he seemed pretty good. We headed to the mountain bright and early. I still remember that morning so vividly because it was so quiet and peaceful on the mountain, and that was such a rare moment for me and my children to have that time together, because normally they would go take off and leave me alone. We were meeting my dear friend Alex that day, and once Alex and her family got to the mountain, my kids took off with her kids to leave Alex and I to ski. As we were skiing, I explained to Alex what was going on with Jason, and she got very concerned, and she said all the symptoms of his concussion, he needed to go to the ER. I called Jason immediately and asked his mother to take him. As I wrangled up the kids, he called back, and at this point, he had said, "I've already been admitted. My sisters are here. Get here when you can." And then he said, "I love you." I remember as clear as day. I hung up and I looked at my friend and said, "I got to go now. Something's seriously wrong." Jason and I weren't the couple who said, "I love you" every day. We said it in special moments for us, which meant more to our relationship. Those 3 words told me he was scared. I got the kids and we drove to the hospital. We walked into the room and his sisters and mother were in there. They quickly took the kids away. I climbed into bed with Jason and I looked at him and he said, "Hun, I have a brain tumor." I instantly started to cry in his arms. We decided together we would tell our children and be transparent. At the time, Gavin was 12, Grace was 10, and Wyatt was 8. We told them together as a family. I just cried and cried as Jason was incredibly brave explaining to the children. At one point, I felt hands on my shoulders in comfort to realize it was my 10-year-old daughter, Grace, comforting me. From that point on, I knew I had to be strong for Jason and our children.
How did you and he handle being told about the diagnosis?
Jason handled his diagnosis with such incredible strength and grace. He never played the victim. He never said, "Why me?" See, Jason knew from an early age he had a feeling that he would not live long. In fact, he thought he would never live past the age of 30. As he became a husband and then a father, those thoughts were not as constant, but he told me he always felt it. Jason made the most of his time on this earth. He did what he loved, and he loved back. He decided he was going to make the most of the time he had left and keep hoping for a miracle. For myself, I think I just went into planning mode and helping him and project planning and thinking of everything that I could do to make his life and our life just normal as can be with such a horrible diagnosis.
How did you support him mentally and emotionally? How did you and your children receive support?
After Jason came home from his first surgery, he was very different. His glioblastoma, his tumor, was in the frontal lobe, which is decision-making. So we struggled as a family to really understand what he was going through. I also supported and took care of Jason our whole marriage. So this time was a little different. It was not until the following year when the tumor came back that things really changed for our family. I can't really explain why, but I think that I saw that we were all disconnected and I needed to make sure we came back together because I knew in my heart we were going to lose him. We were battling one of the most deadly diseases, and as strong and mentally and physically Jason was, he wasn't going to beat cancer. I'll quote something Jason wrote. He wrote a lot. He was a writer and an artist, and he wrote a lot during his diagnosis. And one of the titles is, "Do you have cancer? Does cancer have you?" He wrote about his journey with cancer, and this is what helped him mentally and emotionally. He felt that he was steering his own ship and that cancer wasn't going to control him. He was the captain of his soul, and it was his choice to keep fighting every day as each day was his last breath, and love and create and coach and teach and parent. He truly was the most optimistic person I've ever encountered in my life. How did myself and my children get support? Our support with our family, friends, and community. Jason was so incredibly loved in our community and family and friends that people just wanted to help in any way. And I know my children and I felt and still do feel so much love and so much care. It's truly one of the many things that helped us through such an incredibly hard time, to be just surrounded by so many people doing small things, big things for us, to just show how much they loved and cared about Jason and us.
What advice do you have for others going through a similar tough situation?
It's not easy to watch a loved one battle cancer. A caregiver role is an important role. The role of a caregiver was thankfully a natural role for me, but it's not an easy one. You worry if you're doing the right thing every day. You're second guessing your decisions. The best advice I can give is to make sure you take care of yourself. If you don't, you won't be able to take care of your loved one who needs you more than anything. For me personally, I kept up with my passion of running and my incredible friends that just helped me and listened to me. I also believe that friends and my running helped me with not getting depressed and dealing with grief. I think that if you take the time for yourself and you ask for help, it's the best thing you can do. It's one of the hardest jobs, and this may sound a little odd, but could be one of the most rewarding jobs as well.
Can you talk about the grieving process and the healing process?
Grief comes in waves. So I'm a planner and a doer, a person who gets things done, and grief lasts in the face of all that. You don't get to make time in your schedule, plan days to just dedicate to it. Grief does its own thing. It takes the days or moments that it wants. Sometimes a gentle wave that just reminds us that it is there. Sometimes a wave that engulfs us, leaving us trembling in its wake and trying to right ourselves again. The first year was a blur. I like to say I kept the lights on. I did so many things to distract myself and my kids that year. We took trips. I did things around the house. The second year, reality set in for me, and I walked around saying in my head, wow, this really happened. My children, surprisingly, were still doing okay, so I kept pushing forward. In another instance, time and distance can make us stronger, can heal the wounds. We hear that all the time. When you lose your center, that stops being true. The reminders that loss come at strange times don't always hit the losers in the same way on the same days. On any given day, our squad of 4 is the only as strong as our weakest link, and we have struggled mightily as each of us has fallen into pockets of loss. COVID compounded that, stealing the distractions of school and friends and the life that can keep us from thinking about the loss of life that still affected us so deeply. Our foundation started to crack. I believe reality truly started setting in for me and my children. We are now in our 4th year, and we are deeply feeling the gaping hole in our home in many different ways. I've had to handle many things alone that have broken my heart into a million pieces. It may sound odd, but reality is that we're still grieving into our 4th year. The 4 of us lost our person. He made us better when they were hard. He made things fun when we were bored. He made us smarter with all his knowledge. He simply made our lives easier by just being. I was so determined that things would get better each year, and it is so much a part of me to attack a project and see it through. And I've been bitterly disappointed. I realized that the goal I should have set for us is not to live through this, but to continue to find ways for the 4 of us to live with this. I'm as determined as ever to be daily what my kids need to grow along with this loss and come out stronger, knowing that grief will always be along for that ride.
What do you wish your healthcare providers had known about what you, your husband, and your children were going through? Is there anything you wish his providers had done differently in their interactions with you?
I believe that our healthcare providers knew very well what we were going through. They showed empathy and compassion. I think that when you get the news that you have cancer and it's the average survival rate of 15 months, it's just completely devastating. I believe that when you go through something like cancer, you need an advocate. I believe a patient needs to be a patient and focus on their mental and physical state. Having an advocate, the person who can help make appointments, driving, and have those tough conversations is incredibly important. There's a need for an advocate that can manage the patient, caregiver, and healthcare professionals, the conversations you have to have, the different terminologies, pushing back when you need to push back. Someone that has knowledge, they also have empathy and compassion to handle difficult conversations. When you're diagnosed with cancer, it can be all-consuming. We were so incredibly blessed to have a dear friend, Rob, who did this for us. He's the one that pushed back on treatments when we thought that we weren't getting the best treatment or thinking outside the box. He was our person. He had deep knowledge of science and medicine and had the directness to get his point across. He helped in ways he will never know. He had some difficult conversations with Jason's doctors. This disease has really no movement, and we wanted to push that. We did our best with our dear friend by our side, Rob. Having someone like Rob to help navigate the journey of cancer would make any cancer patient's life a little bit easier. I know Jason was extremely grateful having Rob in our corner, as I will be internally grateful to him.
Do you want to share examples of something your healthcare team did that really helped you during this difficult time that you wish all providers could learn from? Our
oncologist spent the time, had empathy for us. She absolutely cared about Jason. You saw it in her way she talked to him, spent the time with him. The last appointment we had with her was probably one of the most difficult appointments we had. And I know she walked away. She just had the empathy that I think that some patients need. Not every patient needs it, but we needed it. And that really helped us to know that she really cared about Jason. She cared about us. She cared about our family. She cared about his mother in the room. She cared about trying her best to help in any way she could to beat this disease. And I think that for us, that was really important and it mattered to us.
Can you tell us about the Win the Day Warriors charity you set up? What is it? What does Win the Day mean? And how can listeners support it?
Win the Day Warriors is a local organization that gives the gift of kindness to those in extra love and support during difficult life experiences. I run marathons. I started at age 40 and I run one every year, 49 this year. And the year I actually ran the Philadelphia Marathon a week before Jay died. And the last thing he said when I came home that day and climbed into bed was, "You won the day." And that's the last thing he said. He passed away a week later. The following year, I raised, along with my friends, over $25,000 for Sloan Kettering in New York, and we ran the New York Marathon. And we just started thinking, like, we have something here. And as I said earlier, the people that surrounded us with such love and the random acts of kindness, which was Jason's entire life, I wanted to keep doing that and just give back. And I know what it felt like to come home from a long day at the hospital and feel really beat up and get a scan that you didn't want to have the bad news and there was flowers or the lawn was cut or someone picked up your child. Like, that meant the world to us. And I just know that Jay would want that. I believe that he's smiling down very much on all that we have done in his memory and to help others. He just was the most optimistic person I ever met. And he looked at each day with an opportunity to win the day. He was someone that lived 46 years of his life to the fullest. He left this earth with no regrets. And he told the ones he loved them. He fulfilled his dreams of being excellent, being a teacher, an artist, a coach, a writer, a son, a brother, a husband, and most importantly, a father. I think the best way to support us is just read Jason's story, go to our website, winthedaywarriors.org, read some of the things we do. We're on Facebook. Today, we delivered over 10 arrangements to our local school nurses just to thank them for all they've done this school year. They've had a hard job. And it was the best 2 hours of my life I've had in a while. I don't know any of these nurses, and neither did my friend who came with me. And it just was awesome. I left really happy, and I know that's why Jason did those things. And he never told anyone, which was always so amazing. And I feel those are the gifts he's left behind for me and our kids, for all these people to tell us all the random acts of kindness he's done for everyone.
Is there anything else you want to talk about specifically or add?
I think I just want to remind everybody that May is Brain Cancer Awareness Month. Glioblastoma is one of the most complex, deadliest diseases, and more than 13,000 people would get diagnosed this year with GBM. And it just hasn't had a lot of movement. So just be more aware and go on Facebook, change your profile picture to Gray Matters. Just anything to just get more awareness out there. And just remember, each day, you have each day to take an opportunity. You don't have to have these huge wins, but a small win is a good win, a big win, medium, whatever it is, that we get each day. And not everybody does. So I think my big thing, I don't stay angry too long at my kids or anyone, because I don't know if we're going to get tomorrow. And so he lives on in us every single day.
A very special thank you to Alicia Taylor for taking the time to share her story with us. This podcast does not constitute medical advice and should not be taken as such, and does not replace professional judgment or advice. The ideas and viewpoints expressed in this podcast do not reflect the official position of the speakers, authors, affiliated organizations, the Nurse Practitioner Journal, or Wolters Kluwer.